Recording in progress.
It is 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's Design Review Board. This is a regular Design Review Board meeting of the City of Milton. I'm Ken Warlick. This is a 7-member board appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations. The Design Review Board reviews plans and makes recommendations to the Community Development Director for the developments, except for single-family residential, in the form-based code and overlay districts. In addition, Design Review Board approves or denies demolition requests and makes recommendations to the Board of Zoning of Appeals on variances. So at this time, I would like to call this meeting to order, and please ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Yeah. No. All right. So at this time, I would like to introduce our staff and board members.
Jackie Lim, Planner 2.
Michael Cardiman, Planner 2.
Mary Cronk, Hickory Mill Lane.
Casey Robinson, Parkbrook Trace.
Reed Casey, Bethany Road.
Ken Warlick, Hipworth Road.
Doug Haney, Bethany Way.
Rachel Greathouse, Hickory Flat.
Great. All right. So next I'd like to call for an approval of the agenda for tonight's agenda. If I can get a motion for approval or any comments.
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Ready?
Okay.
Okay, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, tonight's agenda has been approved. Next, we will approve the meeting minutes from last Design Review Board meeting, which was Tuesday, September 12th. Can I get a motion for that or comments?
I have some comments.
Okay.
What I wanted everybody to take a look at was where we have the conditions from DRB for 13325 Arnold Mill Road. In looking through the 4 conditions, I thought that it might make more sense if we flipped a little bit. If you look at number 2, the main house and the barn must be demolished. I thought that would probably be the first thing that gets done. And then after that, number 1 would be code enforcement will investigate the structures to remain. They're going to demolish. Then code enforcement is going to come out and look at everything. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I just kind of wrote up what I thought might work. And I can, if you guys want to, I know you guys can't, if I read it, it's probably not going to stick in your brain.
Just read it for the record.
Got it. Okay. So conditions, 3 structures marked by hash marks as shown in Exhibit D of the revised site plan dated August 31st, 2023, the main house, the structure labeled chicken house number 1, and the back portion of chicken house number 2, must be demolished within 30 days of the, and is it approval or issuance of the demolition permit?
We could say issuance of the demo permit.
Okay, issuance. Number 2, after demolition, code enforcement staff will investigate the remaining structures, the 26-foot width by 35-foot length shed and the 40-foot width by 53 length front portion of chicken house number 2, for structural integrity. If they are safe to use, those structures can remain and do not need to be demolished. Condition 3, applicant must come back to DRB prior to or before the March 2024 meeting to present the application for a certificate of endorsement for the building and architecture aspects and enhancements of the remaining structures. Then 4, after issuance of the certificate of endorsement, code enforcement staff will monitor the remaining structures to ensure that the intended agricultural use per section 64-415, parentheses A, parentheses 2, is pursued. If the intended agricultural use is not being pursued, the remaining 2 structures must be demolished. So that last sentence was added.
You want to put a time frame on there, or? Well,
That's a great question since we're almost 30 days out anyway. Has there been any progress in that, or is that something that we're able to discuss? Or do we know?
Well, after the issuance of the building permit, the applicant is working with code enforcement to ensure that we complete that first condition, which is demolishing the house within 30 days. Actually, Mr. Balu and I, we communicate during the process, and we make sure, because right now he's in getting quotes, period of getting quotes and finalizing the person that's going to do the demolition for him. So, but we're on top of it. Yeah.
So can we put conditions on something when we don't have a hearing on it? Is that
Because,
something we
I
can do?
mean, these are our notes from what we discussed. So we had discussed that if the two remaining structures weren't there, they needed to be demolished. But I don't know that we put a time frame on that component. We said that they needed to come back to DRB within 6 months, would be March 2024, and that code enforcement would make sure that they were actually using it for an agricultural purpose. But I don't think we put like a drop date on that.
Yeah, I thought the initial demo was to be done within 30 days, which sounds like that has not happened. Then they were going to review whether the remaining structures were satisfactory. If so, great, then move forward with
Yeah.
putting plants and animals or whatever in there.
Mhm.
If not,
Not
then I would think
animals,
the same.
plants.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Because
animals,
it's too
yeah.
close to the, correct, just plants, sorry. If they weren't suitable, then I would think the same 30-day would apply then from that time forward. I mean, just thinking time frame kind of logically of that sequence of events.
Well, also too, is I believe that is something that code enforcement can enforce, not necessarily this board.
Yeah.
And so
Good call.
if code enforcement, since there was already a citation or a notification of that it must be demolished, I imagine since we've got this in here and there will be a follow-up that code enforcement can issue, within 30 days to have the remaining structures, if they're not suitable or not structurally sound, then code enforcement can make that determination to demolish the rest of the remaining. So,
Yeah.
okay. So is that something we can do is change the format of these up, or?
Because they may be accurate, but doesn't mean we can change it.
I think we can do typos and
Yeah. but
things
not-
of that, but we can't change the conditions from last meeting.
Right, and
Okay.
I wasn't changing conditions. I was trying to clarify what we had said.
Got it.
Because I didn't think that, especially the order of what was in here,
Was accurate.
it would have to be demolished first before code enforcement determines if the structures are sound to stay.
Mhm.
So basically, I was changing the order and then just clarifying what portions we're looking at. And said chicken house number 1, chicken house number 2, just to be more accurate in what we're doing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you want to,
I can
Take a
get
look at
that as
what I
long as there's
wrote.
no major changes in what we've agreed or approved last.
It didn't sound like there were.
Yeah.
it's just
Clarifying.
I think from our standpoint, it was, the fact that the building had already been slated to be demolished by code enforcement. And then that, in fact, we did approve, for it to be demolished. So hopefully that's imminent as far as that process. So, okay.
So we need to make a motion to approve the minutes then.
And I had one other,
Oh,
on page 3, it was 13790 Birmingham Highway. And then I wanted to add that one board member asked if the architect had tried moving the garage forward to get it to fit within the setback.
you repeat that again.
Sure. One board member asked if the architect had tried moving the garage forward to get it within the setback. And then, if you guys remember, that they looked at that, but then that was going to cover too much of the front of the house.
Okay. We can, yeah, so just read that into the record as a change.
Sure.
And then we can make that.
Other than that, I'm good. So, you want me to go ahead and try this? Anybody else, anything?
No, no, no.
All right, I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from last week, from last month, to the changes that we talked about for the Arnold Mill property, and then for the 13790 Birmingham Highway property, to add one board member asked if the architect had tried moving the garage forward to get within the setback.
Got it? Okay. Can I get a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mary. Moving on, tonight we will start with demolition of structures. 5A 15745 Hambry Road. Jackie, if you can, please give us a staff's position and presentation on this, please.
Okay. So our first and only demo review for tonight is 15745 Hamby Road. The size of this property is 13.12 acres. It's zoned agricultural or AG1. The overlay district is rural Milton. It's a residential, which is the existing use of this building. There's two structures in there. One was the primary house that was built in 1985, and then an addition, which is the guest house, in 2008. The applicant requests to demolish existing houses, garage, the pool, and the building. Here's the aerial view of the property. You have Hopewell and Hamby Road intersection and a roundabout. The west. This is the site plan. It shows the properties that will be demolished. And let's look at closer look of the site plan and the location of those structures. You have the pool, the well, the primary house, garage, and I know a portion of the parking pad here, the guest house, and then the building. Sharing some photos of the front elevation of the primary house, as well as side elevations. The rear elevation of the primary house, as well as the pool. The guest house elevations. And then the building and garage. And just want to show you the adjacent properties in the area. And here are some supplemental information. There's no trees will be disturbed during the demo process. A portion of this property is in a flood zone area. And then lastly, a variance that was approved back in 2008 to allow a guest house in the side yard of a property and to allow a guest house to exceed maximum square footage. So when you look at the aerial view in 2007, that guest house is still not there, but I believe it's probably 2008 when they built that. And I'm just sharing the aerial view for 2010 that shows that additional structure. And of course, the criteria for approving a demolition permit, which is the section 64-2425. And I just want to inform the board as well that this property is not listed in the Georgia's natural, archaeological, and historic resources, as well as the Milton's historic list. And staff recommendation is that we recommend approval with the following condition, which is pretty standard that we give to all our demo application to complete the demo permit application separately. And if septic or well is not used, that must be demolished and capped to show 3 safe fence and silt fence during the disturbance or the process. And then lastly, once that's done, we ask that they level and grass disturb area. So we have the applicant, Mr. Reese, also is here to answer some questions. Do you have any questions for staff?
No? Mr. Reese?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Scott Reese from Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. Here tonight representing the Watson family in their application to remove certain structures on the property they've purchased on Hamby Road. There's a fair amount of obsolescence in the two houses. They don't meet the criteria for what they want to make for their next domicile. The storage building down there really doesn't meet the wife's idea of what she wants to drive by. The old kind of historic looking barn that's also located there is not included in the demolition. Their plan is to remove the larger while they live in the smaller, construct their new house. And then within the allowable period, I think it's 60 days of the CO, that structure will also have to be removed. So going over everything with them, they know what the dog and pony show is as far as cleaning up after the removal of the structures. Any other questions, I will be happy to try to answer. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I had one question. I know it says on, let's see, the staff analysis on page 3, that a portion of the driveway will be removed. What portion?
That will be, if you will look at your site plan, you will see areas of disturbance delineated.
Okay,
So the area of the turnaround part of the driveway as shown on the site plan, that delineation is what will be removed with this demolition permit. Now,
would we want to then, this is a question for staff, when we make the motion where it says demolition of structures, would we say demolition of existing houses, pool, garage, building, and portion of driveway? Should that be on there?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
add that.
Okay. And then the plans for the property after demo, it sounds like they're going to build,
yeah, I thought I went over that, but if I
You
didn't.
did.
Do you want me to repeat it?
they're just going to build a nice new house. They're not subdividing the land or anything else. Okay,
Sorry.
great. Thank you.
Yes.
What percentage of this property is stream buffer and floodplain?
A very large percentage thereof, but there is adequate room for a septic field. And as you're well aware, they will have to go through the full land disturbance permit process and building permit process before being allowed to construct a new residence.
So the
this-
idea is to remove essentially the existing structures that are in the floodplain now. The new proposed structure is going to go in the area.
Yeah, right. So due to FEMA regulations, we can't construct structures in the floodplain without a complete compensated fill. And it has to be 4 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. So it's basically going to go in the location of the garage, that little garage and the primary residence. It's basically the only place you can build.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions for the board, for staff, or the applicant? Okay, so at this time, I'm going to close public comment. Any opposition?
We don't have.
Okay, any support?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I will close public comment. Any further discussion from the board?
No.
No? Okay. Can I go ahead and get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 5A, the demolition of 15745 Hamby Road.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congrats. All right. Seeing that we have no more demolition of structures, we're going to move on to courtesy reviews. So 6A, V23-16, 14745 Wood Road. Michael, if you want to go ahead and.
Wallace.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
The applicant is Joe Kua. The address is 14745 Wood Road. and the following variance is being requested. Part 1, to allow an existing barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 98.9 feet adjacent to the north side setback property line and 77.6 feet to the east rear setback property line. Part 2, to allow an existing barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals from an occupied structure on an adjacent property by 82 feet adjacent to the north property line. Here is an aerial of the property showing the 2.97 acre parcel. You can see the aerial shows the barn here in the northeastern corner of the property. And you can see the part 2 of the variance, which shows the White Columns property on Glenover Drive. You can see the distance, and I'll have a slide that further elaborates on that variance request. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton overlay district. As you can see from the lime green in the top right corner, that is CUP zoning, which is the White Column subdivision. Site plan analysis, the size of the property is 2.97 acres. The length is 678 feet, width 436 feet. Applicable setbacks are 60-foot front, 3 25-foot sides due to its unique flag shape, and a 50-foot rear. Some background information, the primary single-family home was built in 1976. The barn and 2 sheds are believed to be built in the 1980s per the applicant, and the applicant bought the property in 2007. Home to 3 horses with 2 currently on site, and if you recall from last month, the BZA granted setback variances to Shed A and Shed B on September 19th. Here's a graphic that elaborates more from the details from the 2 variances that were approved. Shed A in green and Shed B in red were approved at the September 19th meeting. And the variances before you are for the barn housing animals in orange and in blue, the occupied structure that's showing that it's 68 feet away. Here's a zoom out showing the site. Adjacent neighbor map showing support from 14680, 14700, 14725, 14735, 14750, and 14770 Wood Road. Here is a cover letter that was sent to all the neighbors. Letters of support. Here's some directional photos showing the view to the west and east. And the view to the east is towards the White Column subdivision. View to the south where the horse riding ring is. View to the north. Here's a view from the street, which shows it's a very screened property from the street. And here's the view right inside the driveway. Here's a northern shot showing the driveway and horse fence. Here is a northwestern directional shot showing the pasture land and horse fence. Here's a southern directional shot showing the pasture land and horse fence. And here is Shed A, which received a variance in September by the BZA. And Shed B, which also received a setback variance by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Here's the original look of the shed. View of the barn housing animals. Here's the last shot shows Shed B along with the barn house animals. Any questions for staff before I call up the applicant?
My only question is, we're approving this variance so that if repairs need to be done in the future, he doesn't have to come back and do it then. And is that what I remember correctly from last month?
That is what the applicant stated, but also part 2 of that is we can't issue a building permit, typically until things are cleaned up. So this came to our attention. So he's cleaning up all the nonconformities on his property.
Oh, and it's the distance away from that home that was left out.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
what it was. Okay.
We didn't look at the aerial, but I
That's right.
assure you that's the first thing I'll do moving forward.
No, you're good. Thank you. I just forgot.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
No.
Okay. At this time, have the applicant come up.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Scott Reese of Brumlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. I'm here tonight representing the Kua family in their application for a variance to bring into conformity their existing stable. As you well remember, we'll travel back in our time machine to last month. The reason we're here is there was an advertising error when we were trying to clean up this. So the gist or the reason is these structures, through the historical archive photos, I have a photo in 1983 that shows this structure in question in existence. So it's been in existence around 40 years. There will be maintenance that has to be done on the structure. So to make sure that no neighbors are upset or anyone is upset, this will allow, if the roof needs to be repaired, the siding needs to be repaired, anything, it will not allow the footprint of the structure to change in any form and or manner. It will only allow normal repairs to the existing structure. So we've got a 40-year-old structure. The area around it changed during the process. It was built before the subdivided neighborhood known as White Columns was placed there. The house in question was built after the fact, and some ordinances changed and created this nonconformity. So it's existing grandfathered in right now, but any remediation repair might trigger a problem with the grandfather. So to disallow that problem in the future, the applicant, since we encountered that with the other shed, the small shed that needed repair, we want to clean up everything and allow for future remediated repair. So any questions, I will be glad to try to attempt to answer those.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Nope. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so I will open it up for public comments. We have seen obviously letters of support. Is there any opposition?
No.
No. Okay. I will close public comments. Any discussion? No? Okay. So I will make a recommendation that is in line with our recommendation from last design review board meeting, which is recommend a condition that the building materials of the shed accessory structure shall be built with similar materials to the other structures on the property. And I think that kind of at least brings it all together as far as we're not discussing footprint, but at least the finishes and the materials are cohesive with the rest of the structures on there. Does anyone,
I'll second.
any comments on that? Good?
I would agree.
Okay. So that would be our recommendation. Motion for that. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Thank you. All right, moving on. So our next courtesy review is 6B V23-17 3144 Watson's Bend. Michael, if you will go ahead and give us some information on this one.
The applicant is Constantinos Suarez, address 3144 Watson's Bend. The requested variance is to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a private street to increase from maximum allowed 25% to 27.77%. Here's the arrow of the property showing the site. Here's the zoning analysis showing that it's AG1 zoning located in the Manor subdivision, and this property is located in the rural Milton overlay district. Site plan analysis, the size of the property is 1.168 acres. The length is 486 feet with a width of 204 feet. Applicable setbacks for the lot are a 60-foot front, 2 25-foot sides and a 50-foot rear. And I just want to point out, there is a golf course easement in the rear of the property that pretty much engulfs the rear setback. But that is a covenant through the manor and not applicable to city zoning ordinances. The existing lot coverage is 23.6%, and the applicant is proposing 27.7%. It was originally 30.9% on the building permit, and they did reduce it to 27.7% for this submittal. And they're also proposing a 150 square foot rain garden for water quality. Here's the full site plan for your view. And I wanted to point out at the end of the property, if you follow my cursor, this is a 325 square foot golf cart that actually is from the Manor Country Club. And that counts towards their calculations for the property. I wanted to point that out to the board. On the left, and you have a printout, which is the variance submittal from the applicant from the 9/5/23 variance site plan, and they're proposing 27.7%. And on the right, you can see is the recommended updates from staff, which were presented to the applicant last Wednesday, and the following changes were made. Move the pool farther forward and inward, reduce pool decking from 970 to 315 square feet, reduce pool surface water by 96 feet, and finally, this would reduce the overall lot coverage from 27.7% to 26.3%. And this recommended staff update was emailed to the applicant last Wednesday, so they have seen this as well. Some background information. The primary single-family home was built in 2006. Applicant has resided at the residence since 2011, and the city's lot coverage requirements began in 2012. You also have some additional letters of support that came in after the packets went out, and you have printed out so well, showing that 3124 and 3164 Watson Bend support this variance request. And they did sign for the 27.7% as detailed in the letters, which are before you. Here's a view to the north, which is also the backyard and part of the golf course. A view to the south, across the street. View to the east and west. And just to note, per the applicant, the swing set and trampoline will be removed as they would have to meet primary setbacks 1 and would count towards their lot coverage totals. And here's a view from the rear of the backyard. Any questions for staff before we call up the applicant?
No? Seeing none, if we could call the applicant up at this time, please.
Absolutely.
Hello, good evening. My name
evening.
is Josh Dover. I'm with Georgia Classic Pool. I'm the pool contractor who will be building this project for the applicant at 3144 Watson's Bend. I just wanted to point out a few facts and hardships. Michael mentioned a few of them. This house was one of the first built in the manor back in 2006, well before the lot coverage rules were set in place. So with the house being 6,000 square feet, with the hardship of the topography of the lot, the driveway has to wrap around the front of the house going up the hill and accounts for 5,000 square feet of the property as well. So the mixture of the house and the driveway account for most of the lot coverage. There's also, long walls that have to hold up much of the neighboring property that account for over 100 square feet of the property, of the lot coverage. The 325 square feet is currently counting against us. That is the golf cart path. A few of the recommendations that were made with pushing the pool, making the pool smaller and pushing it closer to the house. It just didn't fit the proportion of the yard, and having it too close to the house didn't feel like it was going to leave much space in between the house and the pool, and much more space in the back, not being proportionate to the size of the space in the backyard. We did change much of the pool design and the layout, changing the The pool decking from 2,200 square feet to 970 square feet. That's more than half of the pool deck we took away. We removed their fire pit area, their stone steppers going to their basement. So the only thing we're applying for is the pool and the 970 square feet of the pool deck. Much less than that is just going to give a very small area of pool decking around the pool for furniture. We do have support from the neighbors and the HOA, and we will be providing mitigation by installing the rain garden to collect rainwater. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Great, thank you. Please, go ahead, Mary.
Are you all comfortable with the 26.3% lot coverage with the revised plan that staff provided?
We would be, if that's what you guys would call for, we could change that if need be. If we're able to move the pool where we want to, but maybe change the coverage to match the square footage, yes.
My comment would be, I would be careful with the use of the word hardship on a piece of property where a third, half of it is actually a golf course, whereas most properties, most homes, you have an acre to fit all of this on. In the manor, you have 2/3 of an acre to fit all of this on. And that is a decision made by the builder and the homeowners, not a hardship.
Thank you.
I have a very similar layout. My driveway is very steep and takes up a good bit of my yard. When we went for a pool, it was either variance or find alternatives. And so, I ended up breaking up some of the pavers with some synthetic turf, which the city does acknowledge as an impervious or a pervious surface. I believe there's two different types. So that may be something I think that could be in consideration to at least reduce some of the hardscapes that's on there. I do have a question is you do not have in your plan, what is on your proposal with the 27.7% lot coverage, what is the distance from the house to the pool? There's no dimension on there. I'm just trying to get an idea. I've got 970 square foot, but the distance from the edge of the coping to the back of the home. I'm just curious on that one.
In some areas, we have about 15 feet. Some it's a little bit more, depending on which part of the house that's there. And we felt that that was enough to have, table and chairs and walking space around.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I would agree on the use of the word hardship. A 40 by 20 pool is a pretty big pool. And I think reducing that decking to what it is, I think that helps get them closer to where they would be.
So I happen to agree with staff's recommendation of the 26.3. I think that that's fair, given that you can use that percentage, but modify the pool and the pavers and the decking and everything to hopefully fit your client's needs, and then also to still kind of staying in the nature of trying to reduce lot coverage, even though it's, like Doug said, is a good bit of it's golf course and house and driveway. So for me, that would be my recommendation. Is there any discussion on that from the board?
Staff's recommendation.
Okay. So for the record, I would say that our recommendation is to follow staff's recommendation of the 26.3% lot coverage, which would allow the applicant to do some modifications, but still get the pool and that they're wanting. So if I can get a second on that.
Is that a motion for approval?
That is a motion for approval based on staff's recommendations of 26.3% of lot coverage.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Still need to go to the BCA.
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. My recommendation on the use of that term is I wouldn't take that term forward to BZA. I don't think they'll take too kindly to that.
Thank you. Okay, next, we're going to move on to final reviews, 7A, Five Below, 13069, Georgia 9, Suite 2520, Building Review. Jackie, if you can, please give us some information on this project.
Okay, thank you. Our first building review is Five Below. The location is 13069 Highway 9, and it's Suite 2520. The size of the building is 11,985 square feet. It's Zone T5 within the Deerfield Form-Based Code. The existing use is commercial. This building was built in 2008, and the applicant requests to remodel the facade of an existing commercial building for a new tenant. And for perspective, here's the aerial view of Highway 9. You have Target to the south of the subject site. Here's the existing conditions. This is the building, formerly Tuesday Morning. There's already an existing dumpster behind the building and some shared parking. Just some photos of the west and south elevations. So the west elevation is the area or the part of the building that faces Highway 9. The east elevation and a photo of the existing dumpster. And as well as the shared parking. Here are some adjacent properties and businesses. And this is the site plan. As you see, it's highlighted in red, the proposed Five Below. I just want to go through the proposed building material change. The first one is, and I'll show actually the photos or the renderings for this. But the first one is to extend the parapet under the existing signage. The new parapet extension is to match the existing construction and appearance of the building. There's new awning. They will install a blade sign, new black fabric on existing awnings, existing exterior lighting around the building will remain, with probably few ones that will be relocated. They're also going to install the new Five Below signage on the west and south facade of the building, and then install a new build-up roofing system and membrane in applicable areas. So here's the proposed west elevation, and under that is the existing, so you can see clearly the changes that's being proposed. This is the extension that was proposed to us to extend that parapet. They're going to relocate the door to partly the middle of the building, and some window signage, as you can see. And we have the architect here to explain further. And here's the south elevation. So the existing, they're removing this entrance door and then replacing it with a window. And then they're adding a steel door. So further review, this is just a summary of what we're looking at. We look at the facade composition. And then, as I mentioned, there's a new parapet extension. There's a new entrance door in the west elevation and a new door added in the south elevation. For facade materials, no additional facade materials to the existing building, as well as color changes. They want to keep it, the same. As far as a roof, if they have a new built-up roofing system and membrane, there's already an existing parapet. So we'll just want to make sure that needs to be screened, whatever they're trying to add. Exterior lighting, existing scone lighting, again, to remain. There's some additional lightings at the back, which is it's a surface-mounted light. And I think the bronze wall pack will go under the awnings of each window. So that's also existing. And then I did mention the screening of the dumpster, which is also existing. We just want to make sure, well, since there's no design and color changes, that still remains. And of course, the signage will be separate, permitted separately, so the applicant will have to apply for that. And just to make sure that they conform as far as the size of the wall signs and make sure that there's no external illumination. They have to provide as well the details of a blade sign. And we want to make sure that the sign and window shall not exceed the 20%. And so with that, staff recommends approval per the building plan that we submitted. However, actually, I'm going to add one more comment to this. The first one is to provide window sign, blade sign, wall sign details in the sign permit application. And then the second comment, which I just learned this afternoon, that they will need to obtain a letter of authorization from the landlord before any building permit can be approved. So if, let's say, the landlord will have some changes on what's being proposed tonight, we will come back again to DRB. But for now, this is what we have. Any question for staff before I call the applicant?
On the signage, and you can see it on this drawing, the one window that's got the signage in it, is that, so you guys are going to be looking, I know that's a totally separate thing, but it can't be more than 20%
It
of the
can be,
window.
just looking at it, this looks like more than 20%.
Yeah, but I know you
So-
guys are going to look at that one.
Yes. Yeah.
And then this question might, about this drawing that has some information, it's the west exterior elevation. Might be better for the applicant to actually,
Okay, let me
Answer
just
that
pull
one.
up that image right there.
and it's got the verbiage about these little awnings.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. So at this time, can we have the applicant come forward and go ahead and give us a little bit more discussion about the project?
I'm Robert Day with MCG Architects. I'm at 222 South Westmont Drive in Altamont Springs, Florida, 32714.
Great.
And if, I think she explained everything. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great.
I do have one.
Mary?
And it's this particular drawing, it's west exterior elevation. And it's kind of hard to read it, but it says, reskin of existing fabric awnings provided and installed by TCG color to be umbrella royal blue.
That's an error.
Okay,
We originally submitted it that way, but it was talking with staff, felt that was not acceptable. So we're
So it's-
duplicating black, which is existing.
okay, and that's what's in here. That's why I just wanted to double check because that didn't. So that answers questions that I had. There was another area on the south side with the same thing.
Yeah, it is the same answer.
Got it. Okay.
Jackie, on one of those pictures, there was a blue line above the awning, a black awning.
So
That's been removed also.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Not
correct.
in our packet, but
Yeah.
on the photos you have.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do, because they've submitted this ahead of time, we're gonna ask them to resubmit and to make sure to correct, especially
Is
the
that what
awning
Mary
color.
was talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the one, so that's the old one. And then we're gonna have them resubmit and make sure that we'll put that before the building permit as one of the conditions.
You already got it covered.
And I'm assuming we're moving the door to put the door in the middle of the building just from a strategic standpoint of.
Interior store layout, that's
Yeah.
where they want the entrance to be.
Can I ask what Five Below is?
It's like a Dollar Tree.
Really?
They-
You don't know? With your kid?
Yeah, you don't
kids'
know?
ages, you don't know what a Five Below is?
The discount
Should I know that?
retail
I don't
store.
know.
Yeah, there's a Dollar Tree in the
merchandise is less
same
than $5.
thing, too.
$5 and less.
Oh my gosh, my kids ask to go to the dollar store every day. That's what we need is another
Now you got the
$5 store.
option. I get a $5. Right, now we got options. I just needed to know, sorry.
There used to be one over by North Point Mall,
Okay.
over by REI.
There is, yeah.
Oh, it's still there?
I think so.
My boys have
There
aged
is a
out of
dollar
asking to go there,
store
so I
just
don't know.
down, same, there's a dollar store like down, very close to where this is going to be.
Yeah. Yep.
I have one additional question. With that new door on the south elevation, and I think it was a shut door, or is that one that's usable?
Yes, that's a steel door.
But it's an emergency egress door.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Any opposition, any support?
We don't have opposition.
Okay, all right, I will close public comment. Further discussion? Board? Okay. Recommendations?
Pretty cut and dry.
I
Yeah.
make a motion for a recommendation for approval based on staff's comments.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good luck. Thank you. All right. Moving on to another final review, 7B, 123 Total Fitness, 12874 Highway 9. Site review, I'm assuming we're going to do B and C
Yes.
as well for a site review and then a building architectural review. Jackie?
That's correct. All right, this is our second building and of course site landscape review for tonight, 123 Total Fitness. The location is 12874 Highway 9 North. The size of this parcel or the subject site is 1.36 acres. It's zone T5 within Deerfield Form-Based Code. The use for this is commercial, and the applicant requests for a review of the existing site plan, and finally, the review of a building architecture plan of the proposed new building. Here's the aerial view. And you have the main grocery store, Kroger, to the west of that building, proposed building. So the applicant requests for the construction of a two-story building with approximately 12,000 square feet building that offers sports performance training. The training area is located on the first floor of the building, and the second floor will be offices. So as you see in the survey, this is an infill development within an existing master planned community that is already largely developed. Here's a closer look of the site plan. This is the proposed building, 12,000 square feet. We have the existing parking lot that's already there, and there's also some parking lights. And just to show further, here's the proposed location of the building, the entrance and exit. And then there is already an existing mail kiosk. Just going to share some photos of the location of the proposed south elevation of the building. And this is the view from the west elevation. The view from south elevation of the building. The shared mail facility and dumpster. And we have some already adjacent properties, different restaurants and businesses. And let's proceed with the proposed building renderings. So what you're looking at is the south elevation. Proposed north elevation. West elevation. And then east elevation. And lastly, this is the view of the proposed roof. Here are the exterior materials. Looking at pastel color scones lighting. There will be a stone-based water table, the brick, the color for the board and batten siding. And I just want to also share the proposed interior floor plan. The top left is the first level. This is where the open training area, as well as the place for lockers. The drawing below that is the second floor, where all the offices will be located. And then to the right top drawing, this is also just an image of the proposed mezzanine, and then the open training area below. And the image below that is the proposed roof. So let's go over the different standards. So for site and landscape, as mentioned, it's existing. There's already a shared dumpster, a parking area, and common meal facility. So we just want to show that to the board. And not necessarily we're going to do any approval, but certainly if there's recommendation, like maybe cleanup and things like that, that's something that you can add. Let's look at the building form. The proposed height of the building is 41 feet. And we look at the first floor, including the mezzanine, and that's 22 feet. The second floor is 12 feet, and then the parapet height is 6 feet. Moving on, architectural standards. We look at the facade composition. Is the entrance articulated, which is in this case, yes. Windows are vertically shaped, where the height is greater than the width. The facade incorporates a recessed wall. And lastly, for the facade composition, it provides visual division of the stories through architectural means. And for this instance, you have the brick corbel bands of 4 projecting row locks. Primary facade materials, we have brick, stone, and board and batten siding. Again, let's look at the primary color. We have black, gray, light tan, or beige for brick and stone. And then as mentioned earlier, it's a flat roof. There will be HVAC equipment, but it will be hidden behind a parapet wall. You have the exterior lights, as mentioned, have the scones, and then the barn or black angle shade barn with gooseneck arm. As you can see at the very top of that building that provides lighting for the signage. And as far as the signs, there are 2 types. We have the wall sign and blade sign. Again, that's something that we will work with the applicants separately when they're ready to submit their sign application. And so for this, staff recommends approval per the building plan as well as site plan received by community development with the following comments. We need to confirm the depth of the recess, providing lighting details and glass transmittance for the windows. And we need to confirm the color of the roof. And then lastly, of course, the sign permit. Any question for staff?
I have a question. Depth of recess.
Okay. So the code recommends 20%. So that's something that we will have to ask the applicant because it was not shown in the site plan or the renderings. And The architect is not here today, but we have Mr. Scott Reese that probably can help answer that question.
Okay. Any other questions for staff before we call up the applicant? Okay. Mr. Reese?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Scott Reese of Brumlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. I'm here tonight representing 123 Fitness, Mr. Brian Hughes, Mr. Robert Bolts, and their application for the construction of a new building in the existing Divine Way commercial development. The development was permitted back in unincorporated Fulton County. All the parking, utilities, lighting, dumpsters, mail kiosks, everything was placed in at that time. So I've got a body that 99% is in place. There were some financial hardships, and this last building never got built. But all of the infrastructure was sized accordingly for this building. The pad was prepped and prepared. There were monetary problems, and it's been sitting. So they are under contract to purchase this and put a building on this unoccupied space. I think you saw on the site plan all the details: the mail kiosk, the dumpsters, the parking that meets the requirements for the percentage of the square footage, parking spaces, the tree islands, everything is there. And then the footprint of the building meets the T5 designation. So I think everything should be kind of self-explanatory on the site plan. If not, I will try to answer any of those questions before we move on to the structure itself.
My only question is it looks like it's a drive that goes out the back into that neighborhood.
I'm sorry, it backs up to a neighborhood.
Yeah, and there's a finger that sticks up into there. Is that a driveway that's able to be driven up into that? Is there something being done with that or no?
No, and I'm kind of confused when you say the finger. There is the dark gray is on the site plan. Can we bring that site plan up to
I'm
maybe
talking about
follow up?
that finger.
This looks like a little
At the back of the
jet
property.
out.
Okay,
A little
I'm
jet
sorry, I'm not.
It looks like it's
following.
a 20-foot drainage easement.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
It's for drainage, so it's to drain
Oh,
into the
okay.
neighborhood.
So,
Yes.
yes. So this was everything was one property. The neighborhood in behind it was one. And when this was designed, that semicircle area you see is the northern boundary of the existing detention pond. That red highlighted finger is where the storm pipe that drains that pond, and then it flows through the storm piping in the neighborhood. So it's owned by this property, but it's the stormwater conveyance system, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
What's the difference in the finished floor elevation of this proposed building and Highway 9? Do you have an idea? Normally you got some contour lines on there.
So I would,
If I'm standing on Highway 9 and I'm looking at this building.
so you've got to look through the other building
Yes,
to
correct.
see that one.
Correct.
So I'm going to say
It goes down.
at least 10 feet of elevation drop from the curb back through there. There, you've got, the front building is maybe 2 feet elevation above the curb at Highway 9. But there is I'm going to say at least a 5% or an 8% fall through that rear parking lot, and it's 200 feet deep. So I'm relatively close.
Yeah, because I know that the Kroger has got a
It's down
significant
there.
wall there.
Yeah, but this is, and it's pre-graded, the pad, everything in there. But I'm going to say it's 10 feet in elevation below.
So you said
or
the
12.
existing pad is there?
Yes.
Okay. Were they able to?
It's covered
were they able to
in,
use it or no?
well, it's got pine, little, head-high pine, so we're gonna have to scrape and test, but, it was packed and flat, before the pines invaded.
Got it.
So
Okay.
it'll be minimal grading at
You
best.
likely won't see it from the street, but you will from the Kroger parking lot.
And how about from the development, the Kensley, I think, that
Subdivision in
community?
behind. There is a wooded buffer there in that storm, or where the storm piping and everything is. The fact that Kinsley is significantly lower in elevation. So it would be very tough to see the building itself if you did a site profile from the houses down and the below, going through the tree line, and a building that's 41 feet in height. So not to say that someone couldn't crawl up on their roof and try to find it, but it would be tough.
For staff, is a site profile, is that something that's normally, that might be included? So that if we did say, well, what would they see from Kensley over to this building? Is that something, I noticed in one of these, it did show if you were standing, what would you see when you looked at the top of a building? That's something that's typically included? Just trying to get the perspective
Yeah,
from somebody in
not really.
Kensley.
Yeah, because when they submit a site plan, we'll look at the survey, the site plan, but not on that angle.
Okay,
So,
okay,
We can look into that question.
Typically on a rezoning is when
okay.
when we're changing, when it's an approved use with approved dimensions of building, that is typically not in our packets. But if we're proposing a change, that would typically be something that would be required in there.
And is there any kind of, again, for staff, where this Kensley is located, is there any kind of a setback between them and this new proposed building that would need to be addressed, or it's already been considered, just to make sure that everything's,
it doesn't show in the site plan that was given to us, because for DRB, we only look at the proposed, the subject
okay,
site. So,
okay.
yeah, and we never really typically,
Just wanted to
Yeah.
ask on that.
yeah, for variance or use permit or any, we actually send out letters to
Got it.
adjacent property owners, but for DRB, we don't do that.
What would you say those other buildings are, one-story or two-story buildings that are next to it? Just one
They're
story?
one-story.
One story.
Yeah, they're pretty low.
Yeah, they look a little like taller, they just, from the ground level. up in
The
there.
salon building
Parallel
has
walls
storage
on
up
the top,
above.
just as this building would.
Is the middle level of this building gonna be offices and not part of the gym, or is it all part of the gym?
So the second level is all offices, but when you look at, I'll show you.
It's gym height on the inside, so it's not going to be like a single story.
It's offices for the gym? Okay.
So the first story will be from ground level all the way here, which
Right.
includes the mezzanine.
Got it,
And then the second floor will be offices.
got it.
Okay.
Did have a comment about the condition of the parking lot. I went by and I know that one of the regs is that the dumpster or that wall around the dumpster should be a foot higher than the actual dumpster, and that's not the case in this one. And I'm just commenting that that's not the case in this one. I'm sure you've already seen that.
We are aware, and that dumpster is not on this property. They only have an agreement. So there's integrated agreements for ingress, egress, utilities, and the kiosk and the dumpster. But the dumpsters are located on another piece of property. So,
Have anything else on the
On the site, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Is there any other comments or questions for that, on the site?
No.
Okay. Do we want to go ahead and move into the building architectural, or do we need to kind of?
Let's go ahead, do if any recommendation.
Okay.
Decide, and we can make a motion.
Yeah, make
Any comments on the,
don't
okay,
think so.
recommendations on the site?
on this
I
one.
would just make a recommendation that the parking lot, it definitely could use some sprucing up. If it belongs to this property and not something shared, it could use a little bit of landscaping and a little bit of cleanup.
Okay. Anybody second that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So that concludes the site review. Let's move on to the building and architectural review. Mr. Reese, if you can.
Do I have to restate the
You want to just kind of lead in with
The fifth time tonight?
anything for the,
As much as I enjoy my oratory, I'd rather. So, I will do my best. I've never even played an architect on TV, but I will do my dead level best to answer these. Mr. Ward is in Europe, unable to be here. He has spent a lot of time with Jackie and Bob, the city architect, and they've been extremely helpful in going through. And I think, not speaking out of turn, that Mr. Ward has addressed everything sufficiently to your.
Yes, that's correct.
So, building materials, I apologize, someone absconded with the display easel. So obviously crime is rampant here in Milton, but if you need any more display, if you would like me to bring them up, I would be more than happy to. But I've got, and I'm guessing I've got the water table rock, the brick, a color sample, and the mortar in front of you. And I know the roof color, the applicants, I think, have no problem with the architect, with the cities, yes. So, and the recess it's a 20% of what? Now, I'm trying to.
Yes, let me just read this because that's the facade articulation. So facades over 50 feet in length shall incorporate wall projections or recesses a minimum of 12 inches in depth. So the combined length of said recesses and projections shall constitute at least 20% of the total facade length, which in this case, I think it's at least 20%.
Yeah.
But we just want to confirm the deepness of that recess, if it's 12 inches or,
Yeah.
it is.
It is. And from a visual standpoint, I'm going to say that appears to be more than 20% of the front. But it will, in the finite building permit process, those issues will be addressed and remedied if there is a problem.
yeah, I believe the intent of that is to just not have this flat,
Yes.
front, right?
We're not
Which-
looking for Costco's.
Yes, yeah. Okay, do we have any questions? Go ahead.
One additional thing, Jackie, I just want to check with the recesses with the facades, would that also be for the window frames? I think that was one of the things, window frames must be recessed a minimum of 2 inches from exterior facade.
Yes, that's
So that would
correct,
be
yeah.
included in that. Okay, cool. The questions that I have, it's mostly the difference in the color on some of these.
Yeah, that's why I was
sheets.
confused too.
Yeah, if we look at this one,
That's actually the grayscale version. So the version, I believe in the analysis report,
okay.
it shows the color representation. Yeah, that's it.
Which page is that?
The color, it says
It's the
color
next page.
representation.
So these.
So it's actually brown?
And also in your packet, this one.
Yellow bar on.
Darker,
Yes.
okay.
And the samples over here too, if you want to,
Okay.
for reference.
Okay.
What it looks like.
On the where it gives the colors and the materials, it doesn't, I don't see it mentioning the board and batten, what the colors are going to be for that. Is that,
I believe that
it gonna be
is
the outer space?
actually.
is that outer
included.
space?
That the outer
Yes,
space?
that's outer space, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's only one particular color for
Just it.
everything that's not brick.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming the difference in mortar colors is from that center portion to the outside kind of towers. Is that,
The corners.
do we have an idea on that, Scott?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I
Alex.
didn't also.
You've got two different mortar colors. I'm assuming that the darker mortar color is going to be for the center portion of the building,
That
the
is-
lighter is for the,
Yes,
okay.
Yes,
that
that's
is
correct.
the correct assumption.
Are the windows in the outer space? Did I miss that?
Dark gray or
Pending
black?
manufacturer choices.
So that is a good question. That's something I had was it says pending manufacturer's choices, dark gray or black.
Oh, I see now.
I feel like we should make that delineation as a board and to just go ahead and solidify that.
Yeah.
Um, Dark gray is a lot of different,
Yeah.
A lot of dark.
well, what's dark?
Yeah.
Right?
And it's-
Whereas black is black. And for my thoughts on this is they look black.
Yeah.
What's the color of the rest of the trim? The,
Outer space,
That,
which is kind of a gray.
which is a gray.
Kind of a navy gray too. Yeah.
wait, outer space is the board and batten.
I think
What-
it's everything.
What is the color of the trim? So
The lighter color.
what hangs over the door
Yeah. I don't
and
see that
what's
either.
up at the top of the roof?
The light gray color.
Yeah.
It's just a color brick, isn't it?
Well, I think if you're looking at the grayscale,
Oh,
see, that's what threw me off too. I gotta be honest with you, I like the lighter color
Me too. I really do.
than the darker color. Is there a reason why? I mean, I know the architect's not here maybe for you guys is,
We just prefer darker colors. We're just guys. We can pick any color.
yeah. I'm just curious because to be honest with you, I like yeah,
That's fun.
it just looks better in the grayscale, to be honest with you. But I didn't know if that was something you guys were willing to die on the sword for or but the intent is though outer space is essentially the paint color for everything. There's no, so the gray rendering is not necessarily accurate. It's the color representations on the next page, which I don't think do it as much justice, but okay. Any more discussion for the applicant?
So what are we saying we're okay with this or we're okay with lighter?
Well, I was going to close public comment and then we can discuss as a board if we want to. So
My only question, do y'all really not care?
You guys tell us what you want.
Within this range,
Within what?
this range.
Sure.
No purples, no kaleidoscope.
Nothing that's
So
not
let's-
allowed.
Let's dial it back within this realm,
I
then
think
we're
we can
fine.
make the recommendation. So, well, let's do this. If there's no more questions for the applicant, we'll go ahead and close. I'll open public comment if there's any.
There's no opposition.
Okay. And so then I'll go ahead and close public comment and I will open up for the board for discussion.
I kind of like what we've been doing lately in that area with Jim and Nick's and with the California Car Wash and storage facility on the other side. I like how we're having some of these more Milton-esque types of things. And to be honest, this kind of looks like something that I would see in more of an industrial area, more of a downtown Atlanta, and especially with the darker colors. I think that makes it have more of an industrial look. That's just my opinion.
yeah, it really doesn't have any wood. It doesn't have anything that we've seen lately, which is interesting. I kind of agree with you. It did not.
And differentiate, because we're trying to make Milton have a distinct look and feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think this doesn't say Milton to me. I think we should try to do that.
kind of give it some slack because it's behind buildings. You don't really see it from anything. At least that's what my initial
Well, that
reaction
was
was.
part of my question as far as the finished floor elevation from Highway 9 to the actual building itself.
If it was right sitting in the, right down Main Street, it may be different.
Yeah, I think a building behind buildings looking more industrial kind of fits. Like that doesn't bother me as much. I think whichever color scheme, whichever way makes it seem more hidden. I understand you won't see it from the street because it is way below street level, and not even necessarily from Kroger as much, but from the neighborhood you would, especially as those trees start to thin. If they're pines, they'll grow up, and then you'll be seeing through there, so they'll see it.
It almost looks like a motel.
That was my concern as well. I do like the lighter color, like an alabaster, that stone and brick combination with like an alabaster or a torque white. I mean, I'm not even going to go into how many damn white colors there are, but I agree with you is that, do we go with the darker color and kind of try to hide it a little bit, being that it is, regardless, I think that this is a stark contrast to the existing buildings that's there, and it's nothing but an improvement to what is there. So
Flat brick, basic brick on the front of it. I think the darkness, like you said, I would agree with the darkness does kind of conceal it a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know if I would go white, maybe like a medium gray. Would be nice with all that.
Can I ask the applicant a question? Is that okay now?
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, is it when you guys are thinking about your gym, is this what you envisioned?
So when we chose the color, it was just out of personal
I
preference.
just mean the building itself. Is this what you guys were hoping for?
I mean,
Weird
we
question to ask.
liked the darker gray-ish looking colors, but the outside of the building is not what's important to us at the end
Well,
of the
the
day.
architecture was a meeting of the minds because we're operating in a form-based code, Deerfield overlay. So, a Butler building wasn't in the offing. So this was with the initial meeting with the city architect was how to fill this space, provide their square footage, and this is the end result of what we would hope would be an attractive building. But this is above and beyond what a typical gym would just, the structure. I mean, red iron building with metal siding is where you start on a gym to make it practical, but that's a non-starter here. So that's where we ended up with was a meeting of the minds. But it's a substantially more building than when I first met with them, what they were anticipating. But this is to meet that overlay, the surrounding, every kind of what Milton wants. This is where we're at.
Yeah, I think to me, I fall back on not every building needs to look like a barn in Milton.
Yeah.
And so
I
if
agree
this looks, I mean, it's a gym. It should look like a gym, but it should look like a Milton gym, right? And that's, I think y'all have done a pretty good job getting there.
And we were trying to kind of keep the neighbors somewhat happy that with, nothing stark and different,
Totally agree.
brick, to try to go. Now, those
Yeah.
buildings are obviously dated and they're a little different use, it's the strip shopping center of the 80s along Highway 9, but we can't fix that. So this is kind of the.
Not in this meeting anyway.
Yes, anyway, not in this meeting. Thank you.
I agree with you, Scott. Okay. Any other discussion? Did we want to make a motion for a recommendation to the community development director?
I'll make a motion for, to Community Development Director for 7C, 123 Total Fitness, 12874 Highway 9 for the building and architectural review.
A second.
Just to be clear, that's a motion for approval.
For approval, yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I would say I'd like to see it a little lighter at the top of it.
Well, that is a recommendation that we can make because obviously this has to go in front of review architectural or review correct for the building permit.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
I did include the comments of the color.
Okay.
And then I think there was another one too. The roof color to make sure that
Yes.
conforms with the standard. And is there anything that I'm missing?
Were the windows black?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
The
yes,
windows
the
black or
trim
gray.
for the windows. Okay.
Maybe let's make a comment and that where it says pending manufacturer choices, a dark gray or black, I would say dark gray, similar or matching outer space, the color that's been chosen, or a black. I think either, in my opinion, either of those would be good. And then that way that gives you guys some choices a little bit that it's not really going to be detrimental to the overall look, in my opinion. Is that okay with the board?
Do we have to
Okay.
open this back up at all?
I'm sorry?
Do we have to open this back up at all?
I don't think we did a second, but I don't think we all,
We did. I
We did
think.
second? Yeah.
okay. All right, so let's make a new motion.
I make a new motion for approval to, where are we? 7C, 123 total fitness, 12874 Highway 9, building and architectural review, pending the decision on the trim to be either same as
Outer space.
outer space. I want to say spaceman. Outer space or black.
Okay.
You want a second? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Good luck, fellas.
Good luck, guys.
Good luck, guys.
Guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Being an architect.
His new calling.
All right. Moving on. Final reviews, 7D and 7E, the Reliant Building, 860 Mayfield Road. First, we'll discuss the site and landscape review, followed by the building and architectural review. And Jackie, if you can please fill us in on a discussion on this project.
All right, this is our last case for tonight. It's Reliant Office Building, location 860 Mayfield Road. The size of this subject site is 0.742 acres or 32,342 square feet. So that's a correction from the analysis staff report that I've provided recently. So the correct subject site size is 0.742.
Okay.
It is zone T4, open within the Crabapple form-based code. The use for that area is commercial, and the applicant requests for a review of the site and landscape plan. And then the second is for the review of the building / architecture plan of a proposed new building. Here's the aerial view of the site. You'll see Heritage Walk just north. The south is Mayfield Road. And there's already some existing businesses here. There's also the Milton Library. And it's not showing on this one, but this is the medical offices at the corner. Here's the site plan highlighted in yellow. Here it shows the footprint of the building. And then the second one is that shows the footprint of the garage, the basement garage. So for the landscape plan, this is what they're proposing. On the left side of the screen, it shows all the shrub and ground cover key as well as the trees that will be planted. And some of it, there's probably some existing trees, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so all will be removed.
Do we have, oh, sorry, it's not time for questions. Never mind.
Sorry. in this just show the tree coverage. And let's look at existing conditions. You'll see the proposed building with underground garage. It's on the south elevation or south portion of the building of the site. You have the parking areas. I believe this is the entrance and exit to the site. And there will be a proposed shared dumpster, which will be located on a different property. There's some imagery of the proposed building location. So the south elevation is the one that's facing Mayfield Road, just for perspective. Okay. Here's some view from east elevation of the building, which is the Taylor Morrison development. View from the west elevation of the building. View from south elevation of the building. And then view from north elevation of the building, which is the market, or the crabapple market. Some pictures of adjacent properties. As mentioned earlier, you have the Milton Library, the medical offices, some development, Taylor Morrison development. And let's look at the proposed building. This is just kind of show you the southeast perspective. So if you're looking from roundabout, this is what you see. Have the railing, and then there's some parking areas here. This is the exit from the garage. The entrance is in the north elevation, which I'll show later. The north entry perspective. Down here is what the entrance to the garage. Closer look to the south elevation as far as the architecture. Proposed east elevation. The north elevation. And then west elevation. Here are proposed exterior materials. We have existing lighting, which is, it's already in the pedestrian. And then just one exterior lighting around the building, wall-mounted exterior wall sconces. Here's an image of the aluminum railing. And then let's look at the exterior materials. We have the brick, the paint colors, the limestone, which will serve as the water table. And also they've included the color of the cornice and the iron or the metal collar. Soffits, and then the pavers, which is the side, and also the side walls. So let's start with our site and landscape staff analysis. As you see, the parking lot, I've counted 61 off-street parking spaces total, and this includes parking spaces in the basement, which is there are 19. And earlier, I did show to you the entrance and the exit of that garage parking. As for landscaping, there'll be planting of shrubs around cover ornament plants and trees. And then lighting standards, we have the existing sidewalk lighting. I think we should stop over here in case you have any question to look at the site first and the landscape. Questions for staff, and we also have the applicant representative, Mr. Steve Rowe.
Okay. Okay, so is there any questions for staff or for the applicant regarding the site and landscape review?
Do we have a requirement on the size of the trees that are being planted? Because I know that has come up on the health and the size of the trees at the medical building and how they're pretty dinky. And this is going to be a much more substantial building also on a corner. Can we ensure that we have decent sized trees that are put in that will make it look more mature earlier?
Good evening, Steve Rowe with AEC 50 Warren Spring Circle, Roswell. Right now, we're proposing 3-inch caliper trees to go in, which is a fairly substantial tree. It's not going to be dinky in any stretch. Most of the street trees will match what's there now with at least species size. The existing trees have a little bit of a head start, but within 5 years, you probably won't be able to tell the difference.
I don't know if this is a site plan issue or a building issue, but it seems like it may be both. This is such a key area, just such a key corner in our community. We've talked about this corner a lot. But to drive around that corner, to walk around that corner, for everything that's coming across the street in the district at Mayfield, it just seems like there's a big miss here with the position of the building. I'm just curious why they chose to put it there.
That's an easy answer to give you. The challenge is we have about 16 feet of grade change from Mayfield down to where our entrance is. So the logical thing to be able to make the site work is you park on the bottom level. So we're carving out the slope and then putting the building up at the second level that will address Mayfield Drive and being able to work with the grades as they currently stand. So that's really the main reason why the building is sited where it is.
It just seems like when you come around that corner, to see parking lot is a terrible thing.
I'm not sure you're going to see the parking lot. You're actually going to be looking over the
cars
parking lot.
above, whatever it's going to be. Instead of having a presence like, look, I'm not an architect or a builder. Most of the buildings out here are up on the street. If you go down Heritage Walk, you see like the almost curvature of the road, whitetail bike shop, people outside sitting open. Businesses are sort of front. It's not parking lots. And it just seems like a miss. I don't know if there's a way around it, but it just seems like this is a huge miss on this spot. The architecture, the position on the lot, it's just a mess. So I think we're going to regret this in years to come. And I don't know what to do about it.
Right now, it's really a transition or trying to deal with the parking issue and the grades that we've been given on the site, and it being 3/4 of an acre, really actually less than 3/4 of an acre. It's just a piece of property that's difficult to develop, and I think we've come up with the best solution we can, using the building as our transition of grade, and then using the landscaping and the streetscape to help screen the below grade where the parking is going to be.
I think what you're saying is you've got an elevation of 1120 essentially at the backside of the curb going into the radius from Mayfield to Heritage, and then the parking lot that you're discussing is at 1111. So
Well, we've seen
9 feet below.
We've seen renderings where it was pushed up on the road, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what was approved last time. I know I was here for the first.
Or it was in the curve, or in the curve.
It was farther right.
Yeah, I believe the parking was just in the rear of it. It did have a small portion. It was up against that wall. What, can I ask a question? Why are you back? Why are we now with this design versus the one that?
I think when they looked at the building and the way it functioned and worked with the use they're going to do, they needed to rethink the way it all sat on the site, the way the stories worked out. They tried to put almost too much on 2 stories, had to go to that 3rd story to be able to get everything to fit and work. And it was more of a programmatic and siting issue than anything.
Okay.
Was the other building that was previously approved closer to the road on Heritage?
To Heritage.
I think it was.
Parking wasn't
It was
there?
pushed back and to the right because it had a huge.
of blank wall that you were looking at to be able to perch the building up to come closer to heritage, because instead then we had a large, 10-foot wall with nothing.
You remember
So
that?
we had a
I
lot of
remember
screening
that
in
too,
front of
because
that.
the part of the concern of that conversation was you're going to have this big brick wall along the side of the road.
Right.
Because there's a lot of conversation around what do we do landscaping wise so that it's not so harsh.
Well,
To have that wall
It was
right
stone.
Yeah.
I believe we made comments on the size of the gallon or the trees that were to be planted there.
But don't we have that on Heritage Walk? If you come up Heritage Walk, don't you have some walls and high, like
On this side of the Heritage Wall.
But you're right. There was a courtyard almost type area between the two
it was a
buildings.
was on the
playful
opposite
area. It
side. It was
wasn't
on
a
the opposite
concrete
side of the
parking
building.
lot. It was a nice outdoor space. It was a usable space. I think this plan, and again, not an architect, I just think it devalues the corner. I think someday this building gets ripped down. I think the value of this property is so valuable, and this plan, I'm sorry to say it like this, just not good. Someday this building comes down and it's reworked. I just hate to see that happen. I think it's such a powerful corner. It's the keystone to our city in that area. And there's just not much to it. To see another parking lot stinks. So I don't know how I can say it more polite than that. Sorry.
Rather have the facts than.
Yeah. If it were up to me, I think this gets tabled. And I don't know that we can do that. That's your call. And they go back to the drawing board with this completely.
Did we have any more comments or any more questions for the applicant regarding the site and landscape review on this one? Because I can close that, correct?
We can close the site, you
Yep.
make a motion,
And
and
then
then we'll
we'll-
proceed with the building.
Yeah, but I think
Have just a board discussion. So unless
Yeah.
you guys have anything further to say regarding the site.
No, we've been trying to work with staff about
Okay.
getting the building sited, and it's just what we've come up with, trying to solve all of the challenges we have internally as well as what the city's looking for.
So can I ask staff a question?
Yeah.
So I mean, so what's that? What is your take on the orientation of the building, the use of the building, the parking lot being right there? Because I agree with Reed. If you come from Roswell, you come through that oversized roundabout, and you come down. Everything on the left side of the road is on the road, and then you come to this, and there would be all that parking lot there. If you're coming from, the Alpharetta side and the Crabapple, the first thing you're going to see is going to be this parking lot or a wall or whatever it looks like. But it is the first non-residential building that you're going to see, and so we got to get it right. It's got to look really good. I mean, we've got a horse in the roundabout for a reason. That is an important traffic circle. So what is y'all's take on it? And
So if the board recommends that we go back again to the drawing board, look at the building, we can certainly do that. But when they submitted the proposal to us, we just look at the facade, the articulation, the composition of the building, that thing.
so is the problem the shape of the lot or the size of the lot and being able to fit a big enough building and have enough parking?
It's both size and shape. It's kind of a combination of the both.
Can you not curve the building into the
I'm the
shape of the-
engineer landscape architect. I'm going to let the architect speak to that.
Well, I think what we're looking at is actually, please, if you'll go ahead and,
I'm Tim Slager with Hendrick, architect on the project. Atlanta, 1201 Peachtree, Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, we did do a lot of different, evaluation of how the building could be. The reality is to make an efficient office space, it really needs to be kind of the square, the most efficient floor plate. It's a small building. It's only 18,990 square feet total. Obviously, we got challenges at the 3-story building that we did our best to try to site it to Mayfield. So that in essence, if you're at Mayfield or you're coming down the street of Mayfield, in the sense of the buildings next door, that it has a presence. I mean, it does have a presence. I get your point from the roundabout and the entry that the parking, but again, it's 9 feet below, and that we still thought we had a really strong kind of corner element to that. I understand that it's pushed to the west a bit. But in the sense that we thought it was actually a very nice presence for that corner and as a kind of entry
Well,
to.
if you go in out and you stood on Mayfield Road from the library and you looked at it, that's probably true. But my office is here. I live that direction, heading this direction. I mean, 20 times a day, I come to that intersection. And I'm going to be looking at the parking lot because most of the traffic gets diverted up to the high school. And that's the present. I don't know that the presence really is Mayfield Road. So just thinking about it in that way.
Kind of a gateway into Milton with the horse there in that circle from.
That's why they put the roundabout on Charlotte, is to push you around to get to City Hall. So I just think it's a miss somehow. So
But it's more of a site-related
I
issue
shouldn't
still,
say that.
right? Not a building-related issue, or you're thinking that the building needed to respond more to the.
Well, I think I understand what you meant when you you wanted a presence on Mayfield. Like, I think I understand that. I just don't know that that's where the presence actually should be. I think the presence is the corner itself. Does that make sense?
It does. So I looked at this, and from what I remember of the previous building was kind of what you brought up, Doug, is going around that corner. They did have a courtyard, and the building was shifted more towards that corner. However, it was built up with a wall holding it up. So when you're coming around that corner, let's just assume we're walking around from Mayfield onto Heritage.
Mhm.
There was a wall that went from, 1 foot tall all the way up to 9 foot tall at the back side of this building, where the parking deck then kind of sloped down to meet that
remember.
grade. So I think the difference here is now it's the natural contour of the existing sidewalk with just a small little, 2-foot wall above kind of grade with a railing there with plantings along there and the building is shifted back further towards, the next building, right, on Mayfield. And so instead of rounding that corner and looking at this giant wall that just kind of creates that building, then the building up higher, this is at least softening that where the parking lot is lower. So I see it from two different sides. Do I want to look at a wall walking across or walking around that radius? Or do I want to look at some vegetation, some trees and a railing behind it and a parking deck down below, right?
Do we have enough parking for this building now, the way it's done?
Yes.
Do we have an abundance of parking?
No, it's exactly the amount of parking to the square footage of the building.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so I think that's part of the problem is they had to shift it that way to get that extra parking over there. Because if you shift the building this way and put a courtyard over there, you lose that parking. So in order for them to have enough parking for the size of the building, you have to have outside parking along Heritage. Am I right?
Yes, and that's a good point about it. Again, if you brought the building further east, again, you are going to have that wall. Right now, it follows the grade. You're going to have a solid wall as you're building that because you still need to be able to drive underneath. So that's a good point.
Okay. Any more questions for the applicant regarding the site and landscape review? And if not, then I'll close public comment on that and then we can discuss as a board further. No? Okay. So I'll close public comment for the site and landscape review and then open it up for additional discussion.
I mean, obviously, some of these conversations are above my pay grade when it comes to architecture, and it's a miss.
This is the side you're concerned about, Reed. This east
Well,
side.
and the distance that it is from the street. I just think it's a parking lot away, and it just, yeah, yes, I'm concerned about that.
Staff, what is we've got a building that's there existing, and then there's an area that's now just grass, I guess. Are there plans for something in between this proposed new building and what's there existing?
Yeah.
I believe there is
Yeah.
a future.
It's
Yeah.
a sister building to the one that's there now. It's similar in style and size. It's just slightly different shape to fit the property.
Because I do see new building, but I didn't know if that was imminent or,
Yeah. Mhm.
okay.
And it too has external staircases.
And then the same question about the, it looks like parking that's, I'm going to say to the east of this new parking area. There's some additional parking in there. Too. Is that for those
That's for
new?
the current building.
Because there's, you know how there's the little cutout when you look at the site. They're not using the whole on here. That parking is here, but there's an area here that there isn't anything right now, but is that planned to be parking in the future?
I don't
If you
think they
look
own
at the
that.
screen,
Okay.
this section right here
That's proposed.
and the
Yeah,
screen,
yeah, where that proposed dumpster.
yeah, that's a separate
Okay,
parcel.
so that's not
Yeah.
at all, okay.
Did the overall footprint of the building shrink compared to the first one?
Yes,
Dude,
that's correct.
But it went up.
It went high.
But it went, yeah,
Because
vertical.
remember, the conversation last time was bring it down to 2 stories so that it eases you into the taller building next to it coming from residential, and it steps you down to residential coming from commercial.
And what are the building that's planned, what is the elevation on that? Is that going to be comparable to what's there now next to it? I'm just trying to get an idea of what this new proposed building will be. What will be the height
Yes, so
between all three?
the building where you said new building, that was approved with a style and shape and size very similar to the existing buildings are there. It's essentially another phase of those that building that's already there.
And so will this new building that we're talking about today, will that be about the same as what is there existing?
When you say existing, is that
For
existing?
the one that's there and then the new proposed one, since they're going to be the same, will this new building that we're looking at today, will that be on the same line?
Yes, so I'm gonna go on further after the site. I'll explain more in the building
Got it.
and
Yes.
architecture.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it was page 11 in what you were showing before that showed a building, shape of a building to the left. And I don't know if it's higher or lower than what it will actually be, but I do think going forward, I think we've mentioned this before, it would be helpful to see the buildings that were there and kind of where that fits
Okay.
in line with them.
So I'll go ahead. If there's no comments as far as the landscape in the site plan, I can proceed with the building architecture.
Well, this is a final review, so
Can you pause on 13 right there real quick? See how it's just the structures to the left of that building? Is that reality? Like, is that really how far away and the size of what that building would be?
From this building to this one?
Mhm.
It's close.
It's,
I think it has more of a
So the one that's going to be built next to it is going to be taller, and there is still going to be trees in between the two?
No, well, the tree was actually not even on our property, I guess. It's just for architectural representation. But the building that's actually the existing one that's modeled in there, that's there currently, not the proposed one that's going in the infill. Again, it just didn't have the gabled roof on it.
So we need to make a decision on the site and the landscape review, correct?
correct.
Do we move forward? Do we table that, move forward to the building and architectural review, have a chance to go through that, and then we can make recommendations, motions, and all
All
that stuff?
together?
All together.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly do
And I
that.
think that way, we can come up with kind of a consensus or, at least take a vote to, kind of see what,
Okay.
what our thoughts are on both the building, the layout, where it sits, the size, the colors, and unanimous. Or do we need to do two separate?
It's
Let's
hard
go
to do one
ahead.
without the other.
Yeah, because it's one kind of, you don't want to do one without the other, in my opinion, so.
Can you just pause on that one right there real quick? So is that walling off the road? Is it really that height and it tapers down? So where that tree is that tree in the bend of the road?
Correct.
That-
If
I
you
mean,
look
that
at
is
the
accurate.
landscape.
It's 11 feet at the building and the top of that wall, the site wall would be 11 feet. And then it starts tapering down to basically zero. as it
So
gets
that
further
is-
down Heritage Walk.
I don't know which tree that is looking at this one. It's hard to tell.
Right here. Well,
The LA.
this right here.
It's that. So there's
in kind
there's
of the-
vegetation and trees up on top of that little wall too.
Yes.
Is that right? So there's vegetation and trees up on top of that wall, and then that tree we're seeing right there is this first island right here.
Yes, correct.
And at that point, the wall is still 4 or 5 feet tall.
Yes, that's correct.
So I see it both ways, Reed, is if they did reposition the building or take the building over to the corner, then we'd have a wall above the street versus a wall below the street. Either way, I think no matter what, there's going to be a wall, whether it's above or below the street.
Yeah, I think that my beef has more to do when you drive behind Heritage Walk, on the left-hand side, all you see is parking lot.
Yep.
That's all you see.
Nobody ever
I
wants
see-
to go
I see-
over there.
I see external staircases in parking lot.
That's a general statement, but I'm just saying, it's not a natural thing to just gonna want to go hang out in the parking lot, right? And everybody needs parking. But if you come down, continue through the roundabout, come up this part of Heritage Walk, it's very evened out. And I think this is just something about the way this flows just doesn't.
Well, this parking lot would actually be below that existing. So the contours, you got 1114, and then it's showing an 1111 as the elevation of it. So there will be a 3-foot wall, then vegetation on top of that. So if you are on the backside, say at where they're proposing the entrance to this, if you're facing there, they're going to have a wall. The parking lot is going to be below with a wall up and then vegetation above. So I guess it would have been helpful if we'd had a rear kind of sightline perspective where maybe you're standing there and you're looking, and if you're seeing the 3-foot wall below, that takes care of the first 3 foot of the 10-foot basement level, or terrace level. We got to call it terrace level these days. And then if we had vegetation that's 4 or 5 feet tall or something like that above there, it's essentially going to be covering that terrace level to an extent, obviously not at that far corner because it levels out and gets to that elevation. So I think that would be helpful, is to have maybe a sightline perspective from there. And then also probably from that radius, the center radius of Mayfield and Heritage, just so we'd have a better idea of what exactly we'd be looking at if we're walking or driving by or anything like that. Is that something that?
I absolutely agree. I think the sight line is what we need to see, because that's what we're worried about, is what are people going to see when they walk and when they drive by? And just looking at flat, to me, is really hard to tell what somebody's going to see.
Yeah, that's why looking at the picture that's up there now, and you see where that tree is, you can see the wall is still there.
Yeah.
Well, you're halfway around the building at that point, and the wall is still 3 or 4 feet, and then there's gonna be vegetation on the outside of that built up also. The other thing is, we want it to be inviting. We want people to come in. This is an office. This isn't a restaurant. It's not like we're wanting to invite people in to come into this building specific when they're.
But it may not always be an office, right?
Fair.
And it's always going to be the corner.
That's true.
Yes.
I think it should look like our Mayfield area.
So
Do we know and we don't know what the plan is for this part of the property back here? And I know
Existing parking lot.
it's just parking lot. It's just always gonna be parking lot back there? All
It
that?
doesn't belong to this one, so I'm not sure.
I know,
I
I'm just
can't
asking from a
answer.
city perspective. Is all of this back here always gonna be parking lot?
I think the existing, there's already parking lot in there.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
see if there's a
existing.
picture.
It's where they park all the golf carts right now.
Mm-hmm.
Take some water.
But I mean, this area right here, this is not currently parking lot.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
so
it is.
when you look
That
at the
is, see,
existing
that far over it
conditions.
Where
is?
they park all the golf carts. If you drive by there on any given day, there's typically, 10 golf carts parked out there.
This was that far over.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, that's the view. Yeah, so all that grass, so that big grass cutout right there, that's still there, where it says proposed shared dumpster.
Yeah, that was, I'm not really sure about that section. Maybe, Steve, could you shed some light on that one? Because we're seeing in the site plan that was proposed, there was already like a proposed parking spot and a
Yeah,
dumpster.
In that section, I don't know if you can go back to one of the site plans, you've actually, in this is a good plan to see. We've actually got an agreement with the neighbors to do a connection area there in that piece and build the dumpster in that same general area. But this gives them access out our curb cut, and it's essentially an interparcel access within this whole development that we're required to honor as a part of the overall
So
development.
does that parking count towards the parking in
It
the
does
building?
not count as our parking. We do not get to count that towards our numbers. It's for the neighboring property.
But you have access to it.
I do, but we don't, well, I
I
have
know,
physical
I'm just-
access to it,
I'm
but
just
I may
thinking
not
as
have
we-
legal
as we-
access
but-
to it.
But as we were talking through the district in Mayfield and how we provided some of the allowances through some of that stuff, a lot of that, there was interconnected parking that allowances were made, right? Michael, am I off base with how that went down?
but my understanding is that parking was to meet the requirement that was
For the next building.
for the adjacent building that was approved, that at some point,
Is parking required there or is interconnectedness? I think I heard,
Both. Interconnectivity is required, but they need parking, so they kind of
how
solve
can they
both
need
issues.
parking? It's the biggest parking lot already.
it's just based on the number of square footage on the building. And so that's kind of a requirement of,
Do they need that much parking? Do you guys, I mean, whoever the applicant is,
59 spaces is what they're proposing.
yeah, per code.
beyond code, is
Does
that
not
what
get
they need?
used.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're self-sufficient on site with the parking we need right now.
So how about we do this is in light of, I think and we still haven't gone over the building and architectural review, which I know that there's probably going to be some.
Sorry, guys, before we move on.
Yeah, please.
I'm from the owner. I work for the owner, Todd Allen. So we're going to be the owner operator. We're moving our head office there. I'm sure you guys know. We looked at just the whole parking issue. Has been going on for like months and months and months. We even tried to come up with a solution across the street with, what's his name, Brent Beecham. He had space that he said, well, you could take that, but code wouldn't allow us to use. We'd love to have not this huge sprawling parking and high retaining walls on the inside. And, we're trying to make it as visually appealing from the circle coming around as opposed to having a big wall there, which we all agree. No one wants to walk past a wall that's not going to have any windows or anything. And we tried moving the building into multiple places. We went backwards and forwards with the staff, with Robert multiple times, moved the building all over the place. Just to get the square footage, our parking requirements to get for our office staff to have enough space. So we've looked at it. If you'll give us any allowances to have less parking, we're more than happy. I don't think for everyone in the building to have that space, we don't need all the parking, but the code requires for us to have it to get that square footage.
Well, I'd go on record to say that that's something that we need to address and talk about and I don't know how that works with the city, how you get variances for, or credits, parking. I don't know how all that works.
Yeah, are there alternatives for like,
And even,
EV charging or something?
and we do have some bonuses.
We're actually taking advantage of a 10% administrative variance currently.
That's under the building area.
But if they're getting a 10% administrative variance, it sounds like there could be a variance application that could be submitted. Correct?
I'd have to look into that. This is the first I'm hearing this. I don't want to give a wrong answer.
Sure.
I'm gonna have to look into that question.
Like we did look at options. We even have an event hall portion of our building where we're gonna have like presentations for our investors and stuff like that, which isn't going to be occupied, which we even looked, but it's not allowed for in the code to give us extra square footage since we're not actually using it the whole time. It's not going to be occupied. It's
How amazing would that be?
Multi-purpose room, but what you had the term where the occupancy.
It's an assembly occupancy, but we
So-
still have to count.
But
it
it's
for-
not,
but
but it's not
essentially
used at
based-
the same time. Like that'll generally be used in the evenings versus during office hours. So,
Non-simultaneous.
But
use.
since
So
the
non-simultaneous.
code is based off of the square footage of the building,
Square-
that necessitates the number of parking spots
Exactly.
required, even though majority of the third floor is not going to be used day in and day out.
The first floor, I don't know, almost half the first floor is not being used
Understood.
most of the time, like 90 in a whole year, most probably it would be used like 5-6 days a year or something like that.
Got it. Okay.
Hey, Ken, you mind if I jump in?
Yes, please.
So subject to the approval of the community development director, allowed by warrant, off-street parking may be reduced by up to 10%. That's what, correct.
Taking-
My interpretation of this, and I'll confirm, anything past that would have to go in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Well, that's what I'm
My-
saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you go through the proper channels. It's not something we can do here, but if that
Right.
sounds like something the applicant wants, it sounds like something the board may like, a different plan here is too much parking. Hate that you'd have to go through another process to do that, but if that's something that you guys would,
If we could do it like pretty quickly, not like, like a year, it'd take a year to get through. We want to build our building. The previous design didn't work financially. That's why we went back. And that's why we're here again.
I had a feeling
Yeah,
that building.
it was not going to work financially for us.
The use of the building changes and it goes from being maybe an assembly area, but something else happens. Somebody else buys this change. That makes it into individual offices, but the parking is reduced. That's also a consideration that we want to make sure that it would still accommodate what that building could be. Because you can't always count on what's there now being what's going to be there.
So one other thing, we also looked at just the code doesn't allow parking stackers outdoors where you stack, I'm sure you've seen them like in New York where they've stacked the cars even just to go 1 or 2 up. It doesn't allow it outdoors where we could effectively shimmy the building around and then have those stackers that technically we're not going to be using all the time, but in the event that we do have that amount of people, we'd be able to use them.
could you just do a deck of some sort on the left-hand side? Is that something you looked into?
A parking deck?
Well, I don't know, just something else to get parking around there. I don't know.
So
The elevations, the biggest problem is we've got that big elevation change, which really, if it was like 2-3 feet, I think there wouldn't be any question, but because we're 12 feet from front to back,
From this corner to this corner is closer to 16.
16 feet. I mean, that's a big change and on a relatively small lot.
From the southwest corner, I'm at elevation. So
That's
significant.
I wish
the
we
biggest
had on-street
challenge that
parking
makes
right
it weird to try to figure it out.
So is this something that we can say that maybe we would recommend, and I'm discussing with the board now, is maybe we recommend deferral for 30 days till our next DRB meeting in order to evaluate potential variances based on parking. Evaluate and maybe give you time to give us some site perspectives that would maybe help. I got to be honest with you, as far as the landscape plan here, based on what I called a labyrinth last time, is much better. But I do understand Reed's point as far as looking down into a parking lot. But to me, the alternative of having the wall to basically bring that grade up and bring that building up was a concern of ours at our last time this came in front of us. And as far as masking that such hard, stone that was going in there, and then the super ornate iron railing that was designed for the building. So I think in this case is since we've got a lot of discussion, and this is a very prominent building, very prominent location, that it's probably best for us to recommend a deferral for 30 days to just kind of let you guys look into. I do think that's a valid point as far as the parking is concerned, but then I also agree with Mary as far as, you guys may own this building and this may be owner occupied for 10 years, and then you guys move to Texas. And so we've got to make sure that this building, as far as longevity and the parking and stuff, we'd hate to put it into a situation to where it is a detriment to you guys if that is the case later on, that only reserves this building for certain occupancy, if that makes sense. So
you did mention 30 days deferral, but however, if we, assuming that there will be a variance, so it's not going to come back next month, and then
I'm not saying necessarily, I'm saying
there-
that's an avenue that could be explored. It does
Okay.
sound like you guys are in a, position where you're wanting to try to do this sooner than later. I think we agree with that. However, we want to make sure that what is going to go here is not only something that you guys are proud of and that you want, and it fits your needs and checks the box for you guys as far as cost perspective as well. But that it's something that we make sure that we do try to identify as a benefit for the city, for the citizens, and for Milton itself. So,
Yeah, I think it's more of an exploratory as much as possible.
correct, right. And if the variance is not something that's feasible or applicable, maybe some sightline interpretations and perspective, maybe a little bit more detail as far as the sizing of some of the hydrangeas, the grass, the daylilies and stuff like that, to give us a height perspective of what's going to go there. I don't think that's egregious to ask for 30 days to do that. And so I think that's going to be my discussion and recommendation. If the board has any other way.
You're suggesting a view like this, or if it maybe this rendered, but looking from the outside in, like what is it that we're going to be looking at from the street, from across the street, from pulling in to Crabapple? What are we going to be looking at?
Yeah, no, I
Because-
just want to make sure I mean, these are mostly site-related things, and I have to admit, most of our conversations with the city have been on the building itself, the architecture of that. So, yeah, we can absolutely provide, a better update on perspectives and site, get the landscape in there correctly. Again, I mean, the focus, but are there any comments on the building that could help in this 30-day period that we have?
Well, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, so we're still.
So, but I think based on kind of the feedback that I'm sensing and that I have personally with the architecture of the building, I think the 30 days is probably going to be something that, well, I'll speak on the site and landscape first, and then we can talk about the building and architectural review as well. But I think that's only going to give you even more time to look at architectural features as well. So, any other thoughts on my motion to?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to defer.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now let's get into the building and architectural review. Jackie, is there anything that you wanted to add to that? Or you need to go with your presentation on the architect? Okay.
Architecture first.
Yes, got it. I'm sorry.
All right, we did look at the different perspective earlier about the proposed building renderings. And then I'll start, we mentioned the proposed exterior materials as well. And we've finished the site and landscape. Now let's talk about the building architecture, beginning with building form. So the proposal is a 3-story building. So from this level up to the finished roof or ceiling is 42 feet. So that's the height. That's excluding the height of the garage and then the utility room on top of the roof. The first, second, and third floor, the height of that is 14 feet. And then confirming with the applicant, it was indeed the rooftop utility room is 10 feet. Let's go over the architecture. The composition, principal entrance is articulated. Windows are vertically shaped. The height is greater than their width. There's also at least 15% of the total facade area are windows and doors. And then there's a visual division between each story. As for the materials, we have masonry brick, natural limestone for water table, cornice, and a painted fiber cement panel, which is that rooftop room. In facade colors, we have sort of brown brick, tan beige limestone, and gray or iron ore cornice. And just want to show you what that utility roof looks like from the top. So it's just a screened wall. There's no roof or anything. You know, you can see the HVAC units and I think other utilities. As for the lighting, there's only one type of lighting, which is the wall-mounted exterior wall sconces. And then one signage. So as far as the code, they met the crabapple form-based code. That's why we're recommending approval of the building plan with the following comments. Exterior lighting details in building needs to be submitted in the building permit application. Confirm if there are parking lights on the proposed site. We have to confirm the color of the roof, confirm the door materials or slider. If that door slides, there's some associated code that pertains to that. And then lastly, we have the sign permit application. So we can now address the building itself. And is there a question for staff before we have the architect explain more?
Can you, I do have a question for you. Can you go back to previous slide when we looked at the site and landscape where you had the adjacent buildings? You had about 6 of the adjacent
Page
buildings.
13. Oh. That one, where you see him to the left?
I keep going.
This one?
That's it. If you can just leave that up, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Was there any other questions? Staff? Okay. You guys want to?
I'll bring a larger one, but that's something to say. And Tim Slager with Hendrick. Just want to make sure she did a really good job of presenting a couple of the features of the building. So if as you're going from Mayfield on the entrance, it's 3 stories. To the left of that entrance is a double height. Again, that's kind of our multi-purpose room. That's kind of the event space that we were saying that is not used very frequently, but still part of the program. And then as you go up to the 3rd level, there's actually a roof terrace that's kind of carved into the facade to, again, provide some of that depth that we're looking for. And in addition, even on going back to the depth, there's an awning that comes out on the front, which is kind of that little 2-story, let's call it cast stone trim that comes around. There's an awning. The underside of that awning, that would be the faux wood, kind of aluminum soffit. And again, it's kind of got an architectural structural steel appearance to it with brackets hanging back. Let's see, we talked about the, as you kind of go around to the north side, again, there's again, kind of that same trim detail that's reminiscent of the Mayfield side with kind of a horizontal banding that's happening that again is to appear to be kind of a structural element that's going through the, the facade detail for the windows. As we, I think, mentioned, the water table is actually a limestone. So it's a stone water table that then turns into the actual, the garage wall on the basement level. We have a kind of corbelled cornice soldier coursing that goes around level 2, again, to kind of, to break up the verticality of the building. The cornice itself, again, would be painted like it's iron ore, kind of to match the window mullions, and then all the other trim details, awning would all be iron ore. Let's make sure I got all the notes there. We talked about the kind of the decorative railing detail that would go along the site walls. Site walls would actually be a cast stone, so it's a simulated stone look for all the site walls and pilasters that are happening to kind of, again, to help to break down the scale of that wall so it doesn't seem quite as ominous. And obviously the windows are divided lights. Architecturally, they would be recessed into kind of a cast stone trim detail that's happening on the header and the sill. After the awnings and and then I guess again our attempt to try to create a terraced plaza on the Mayfield side. I mean, the kind of pavers that are kind of expressing the front doors would come out actually to the street, and then it has some trees planted out there so that we do create a kind of a plaza entrance off the Mayfield side. So again, we're trying to address the street in that regard. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I think this would also, just looking at this building and looking at what's in that parking lot area, it only makes me think more that it would be great if we could see any of that landscape or because when you look at this, it looks very stark. And if we did see the plantings, and we do have, I think, certain specs that we need for the little islands and parking lots. And so if we could see some of that detail, I think that would help us visualize a little better what it's going to look like. I think that would be really a good thing for us to looking at the other. On the building, again, it was determined that the height of this is going to be, is it 54 total with the roof closed?
53.
53.
Yep.
And that fits within Deerfield form base with the basement?
Yes, in fact, I just looked at
For
the building configuration form-based code for T4. It says that the building height shall be measured in number of stories, including attics and above-ground portions of basement. So which means we're really looking at the first floor all the way to third, so that is 42 feet tall.
And that 42, I know where it says the roof, low roof is 42.
I'm sorry, the roof, the
Yeah.
finished
It's
ceiling?
to the top of the roof, level,
Top
Yeah.
of the roof is 42.
Yeah.
excluding the mechanical penthouse that goes
Yes.
around.
Right.
to
Just
hide the
10 feet.
equipment.
Right. I know one of the questions was what color would the roof be? Is that
It-
determined?
It would be a white TPO,
It's-
just in the
okay.
sense of energy efficiency.
Okay. Does it say in our code,
Okay.
4.18.7, roof color shall be black, gray, dark gray, brown, red, or green? Is that not?
For the crabapple?
I'm not,
That would be for exposed roof, not a flat roof.
Yeah.
It's gonna-
okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to see the
Roof color.
TPO.
Okay, so that's,
As
but
long
I
as
know
it's
that
not
was a
right?
question that was
As long
on
as it's
here.
not metallic.
Okay.
Because it has a parapet wall that goes up.
Right.
Yeah, unless you're flying over, you won't
You
see.
would never see.
Right.
And then it said reference for door materials says that it's under 4.16.11. I know, Jackie, that was one of those, the notes.
Comments, yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing we want to confirm with the architect as well is we want to look at the technical and aesthetic requirements of the door. We want to make sure that it's not plastic, the materials, in other words. And let me just read here that exterior door shall be a durable, stable wood or clad in wood, hard pine, wormy chestnut, just an example. Also, one thing that it's prohibited is the plastic laminated stamped metal and glass doors, or they call it leaded beveled glass doors are prohibited. So that's in the code. So would that be the case for this door?
Yeah, these are all just your standard entrance
Okay.
doors with divided lights in it. So there would be aluminum. It'd be a
And
pan aluminum
also-
to match.
They're going to be like that.
Okay.
Correct.
And then it does, and I assume it doesn't operate as a slider.
It does not.
Okay. That answers my question.
Okay. Any more questions? So seeing none, I will close the public comment and we'll open it up for board discussion.
You clearly have a point to make. Go for it.
Well, no, I'm just following procedure.
No.
Oh,
Excited to see what you made by that picture.
I know, I think he
Mind
wants
to put
those
that
pictures.
picture back up, please?
yeah.
Yeah, I think he wants the pictures.
Oh, got it.
That's my point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I actually don't mind the building, personal preference, but I feel like this building would be more suited in the development behind. Jackie, it's not necessary. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I think, and everything else, I like standalone where it's not all, status quo, but everything else is white, stained accents, metal roofs. And that was my biggest reserve with the first rendering that we had, that and the ornate railing. But that's why I asked you to bring that picture back up, is because everything around it. And I don't necessarily, to me, it's not super important to say, well, yes, there we go, perfect. It must look farmhouse, right? Even though that is kind of the status of Milton, but it just is going to be a stark difference than everything else that's already set in place around that intersection. So I think that really is my biggest reserve. That being said, I like this much better than the previous one. But I do feel like this building fits in more behind in that development because it's very similar as far as the color, the layout, the size, the just square, building. But that's my discussion. Anything else?
I don't mind the look of the building. It is very similar to the ones with Aberdeen and that.
Correct, behind.
Back there, behind there. Considering the one to the left, that's the top left of the adjacent properties, is that white brick that I'm pretty sure the one that's supposed to go into the next is going to be that same white as well.
Identical, yeah.
I think that is,
It'll stand out.
potentially that was designed that way to stand out from a perspective of the owner building the property. However, I would agree with probably that, I don't know if City of Milton, the community wants that big with the surrounding areas literally looking like farmhouses.
I'm okay with it looking different.
Sure. Diversity is good.
If it is a home run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
it has to be exactly right. And if it looks different and kind of Dorit's point, you've got this parking lot and this, that, and the other, and then all of a sudden, now maybe it's a mess. But I'm okay if if it's not white or it doesn't look like everything else around there, as long as it is a hallmark of a building, because that corner requires it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So what would be your recommendation on that?
Again, this is just, I don't mind the building if we can get the layout and the site and everything else right. I mean, I think it's a pretty building. I think you drew up a good looking building. I do like the building. I think it's just problematic with the site issues that we've been talking about.
I'm having a hard time getting my brain around the building until I can get my brain around the site plan. So I don't know if it's an okay thing to defer this to. If that's, I mean, I think they go hand in hand, don't they?
Not necessarily. No, I think it can be.
Separate items.
Well,
Correct,
they do,
However-
if we force the building to move farther east, then yeah, because then that changes a lot of your building, right?
Agree.
I mean,
Well,
it gets back to parking being the
If
issue.
you get a
'cause
variance for
is-
parking and you get to change what the applicant wants, what the city wants, there's a lot that could change.
Yeah, so just some feedback then for me is I like the actual, the limestone. I feel like if there was a little bit more of that, then that would help tie it in a little bit better. I do agree, I like diversity, but it just seems like it'll be this red brick building stuck in between. And so
I agree.
maybe extending that limestone. I really like what's the paint color?
Nebulous white,
Nebulous
Iron
white.
ore.
which is very light gray, actually. but-
Yes, correct, it is. I'm putting hundreds of samples of white on a wall for a client and let's just pick something, So, but I feel like a little bit more than that, I was saddened to see that it was just for the canopy on the roof, right? And you're not gonna ever see that except for on the backside when maybe you are sitting at Aberdeen's or Community Burger looking, and you will see that for sure. But that would be something that I think would be, maybe some of these columns and stuff like that, extend that limestone up a little bit, tie it in a little bit more. You've got it around that atrium and the main entrance right there, which I really, really like that because it stands out.
Or the corners.
Yeah, right. Add a little bit on the sides, maybe the rear or something. Again, these are just recommendations that from what I see. But I do think, I think since we're already made a motion to defer for the site and landscape, that we do the same for the building and architectural review, just to give a little bit more time. But I would like to, if we do have any kind of feedback specifically on any of this stuff, is maybe let's kind of present that to the client so we can, or excuse me, to the applicant, so that can help them when they do come back versus just saying, hey, we like it or we don't,
I like your idea of including the limestone. I think breaking up some of that darker brick, I think that's good.
Yeah, it just needs to be softened a little bit, and I'm definitely okay with it not being a farm, just being a little bit unique,
I
because
agree.
it's really special, like that spot. So adding that softness to it to kind of pull everything else together that's around, I think would be really good. But the shape of it and everything.
Anybody have problems with the windows on the left not being the same as the windows on the right? I kind of like what you did there, but
I do too. Yeah.
that is,
It's
those
almost like
are,
a storefront kind of invite.
It's because that's the double height space. So
Yeah.
so we have the taller doors that open up from the event space out to the kind of plaza out there.
I think that was well
it
done.
almost could
Yeah,
be something.
I
really
do just
different.
want to point out, if you remember the first time this building came in front of us, it was gray.
Right.
And everyone hated it because it was gray and it was too stark. And now it's brown, and now we don't like it again because it's different.
It's kind of
Is it gray or
red.
did they just
Well,
have
Or
a, did
red.
they just,
The rendering of it was gray.
the
And
rendering
that was
was
because
not
we all thought
color?
it looked like the Treasury building in downtown Atlanta because it looked like it was all granite, which was just a bad rendering. That wasn't
It was a bad
the actual
rendering.
intent at the time. But we were all like, wow, that's really stark.
Yeah.
And now it's softened with the brown.
No, but now it's all brown. So I think what we're saying is mixing it,
Yeah.
mixing the two
Rachel
together.
made a great point, is a little bit more combination of the limestone to soften and I'm familiar with that brick as well.
It's kind of red, really, yeah.
Yeah, it's not really,
It's more red than brown, right?
it's got some dark hues to it, which I think will tie well with the parapet roof and the brackets and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's,
Also, I mean, depending on the quality of light.
yeah.
The east side is different than the
Yeah,
south
for
side
sure.
and the
It'll
north side.
definitely be
was
much
just-
brighter, not in here. I gotcha.
So,
Okay.
so you're, one of the suggestions was to work more of the
The lighter
the
limestone.
natural stone, the limestone, up into the building to lighten
Yeah,
the
or
overall aesthetic.
correct.
Mhm.
I think,
So I guess the question is how much? We don't want every one of those verticals.
Or you do the
Otherwise, it's
bottom
gonna look
part
like
in
a
that?
striped.
No, and that's the other thing too, is I'm assuming that these are cast stone
The header.
headers over
sills,
the,
yes.
okay, and that cast stone is the limestone as well, or?
The limestone would be the trim around the entranceway.
Correct.
It would be cast stone over the actual windows.
Okay. Yeah. I think that does help. I don't know if you do it between windows or something,
Yeah.
is add, but then you do that, and then you've got these like big column looking things. So
Or maybe the bottom is more just light and then the rest is the way it is right now.
I mean, is there thought, just in the sense of that front elevation, kind of the order, I mean, even though it's not symmetrical, there's kind of a balance to it. And so when you start introducing that other material and the verticality, it felt a little busy. And we kind of looked at that option.
Fair.
early on. And that kind of simplified it, going to all brick with the
that's a
details.
valid point.
Now, if we want to potentially look at, say, like the west side where we actually turn back and it goes back to the other, there's probably better opportunities there
I agree.
to do that than necessarily the front or the kind of.
I love it how
north or
you bring
south.
that limestone up, is add that atrium to that front, so maybe incorporate that a little bit on the other side as well.
Look at that.
Yeah, again, that's just
What about the,
kind of
what
my
about the
thought
first, what
suggestion.
about the
I would
first
leave.
floor?
What's that?
Did you say the first floor being limestone?
That's what I
That's a
said.
thought.
Yeah, and we
That's
looked
what
at
I
it as well.
said,
We brought
maybe.
it up, but then when you bring it around to the east
said
side where
might
it
look
drops,
weird.
then it becomes a really massive amount of limestone. It didn't
Yeah.
seem
Yes.
as balanced as when we kind of just kept it as a water table on the front, and then it becomes the full elevation.
I'm sure you really like my crazy suggestions right now, but the left-hand side, what are you going to use that for? Is that you said it's a party room or something down there?
It's basically a large conference room.
Yeah,
We call it
gathering.
multi-purpose event space, but it's
Can you
for
color
gathering.
that whole thing totally separate? Can it be its own little thing? What if that was dark? Would that do anything? Does that completely mess everything up?
No, I think our feedback is
Or
hey,
if
it's
it's
just
Or like,
large thing of gray, large thing of brown. So for me is
Try to make it very unique.
I don't honestly, I don't think it's our place to say this is exactly what you should do. I think that us giving you suggestions or recommendations on, we would like to see something lighted up a little bit and let you guys use that as your creativity to. I think the site perspectives are going to help us a little bit too. I'm very well versed in reading site plans and stuff, so I see what you guys are doing. To me, I prefer it over the existing where you had the large wall and then we were trying to hide that. But yeah, I think just give it 30 days to go back, make some modifications. I don't think they're drastic, but I think that would help us better envision it, and then also maybe add some added value tweaks to it that we could come together and be on board with. Any other thoughts on that, the board?
Agree.
Yeah, I think the consensus is that we want this building to look like, like Doug said, as a home. I think the first one was different than this one, clearly. This one is a little bit more Milton-esque than the first rendering of first design. But again, to Reed's point, I think if you can create the picture for us when it comes to landscaping of what you're going to see if you're walking down that curve. I mean, I think the steps are inviting because there's not a full stark, squared off step.
I really like that.
It's rounded. I think that's very inviting. So I think if you can create a picture from standing at the horse in that circle, looking at that railing, landscaping and architecture, what we can expect to see there when it's in full bloom, I think that kind of would potentially maybe give Reed a little bit more, or anybody that may have some disagreement with that, just to kind of see that. Because I agree with Reed, it does look, you look over the edge, you look down a parking garage. It's going to take 3, 5, 6 years for all that shrubbery and that landscaping to fully develop to its maturity. So it's going to be that way for 3, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can create that picture from a rendering perspective with some color, with some other stuff, so it doesn't look so brown and beige.
I may be totally off my rocker, but could the building be repositioned so that the front faced the circle? Because if it did, then you wouldn't have parking on the circle. The parking would be pushed back some. You tried it?
It's really challenging with the parking because the grids and everything.
Curve it.
I don't see how it.
You can't curve it. You can't curve it to match the curvature.
But they said that
Like,
the
if you're
building
gonna go
wouldn't
home
work.
run, just go home run. Just curve it up, do something fun.
I'm thinking like this.
Yeah.
'Cause then you'd have a courtyard right there, but you'd be able to have parking, more parking back behind the building.
See, I think that that's something too, is what's preventing them from doing that is the parking requirement.
Right, that's what he said.
That's what I'm saying, but you would have more parking here where the building is.
Not necessarily, because you've got, I
He
mean,
said the building.
they're
wouldn't work,
squeezing it in
right?
there.
If you
These
curve
are
it, the
tiny
building
spots.
doesn't work as it's intended, yeah.
I mean, there's, it's always
Maybe
an
eliminate
office space planning, and this has all
Yeah.
perimeter offices that it makes it really challenging on a
Yeah.
curve. It's usually,
Gotcha.
office planning 101 is don't put curves in the building. That's why they're
Don't
typically
put curbs in a building, office building
Yeah.
101.
So it's just, not that we can't do it, but
Yeah, tell
just,
City of Brookhaven that in their city hall, but, so, is there any more kind of thoughts, feedback?
Sounds not good for office.
No, I think that, I mean, hopefully we've been able to give you a little bit of,
Furniture.
kind of feedback on that, but I think that, you know, if I'm out of line, please let me know, but I think that it's probably suitable to, also make a motion to defer, for 30 days as well for the building and architecture review of this, and then, you know, come back in 30 days with some tweaks and some clarification possibly about parking and stuff like that. I think 30 days isn't too much to ask to try to do that to where we can hopefully get a home run and, you know, get this approved and get you guys moving in the right direction. So unless there's any other discussion on that, I'll make a motion to defer for 30 days or to the next design review board meeting for the Reliant Building 860 Mayfield, the building and architectural review.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you for your time. I appreciate the comments.
Thank you.
Is it possible for us to get the contact number for is that okay? If we get that contact number or something?
It's on that sheet.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I've lost it.
Okay. All right, moving on, section or 8, new business. Any new business?
Oh, there
I
you go.
have one question. I don't know where this would fit.
Okay.
So you guys can tell me. I have a question about the house at 1255 Birmingham Road that was demoed. I don't know if you guys go down Birmingham Road at all.
Where on Birmingham is that?
Yeah, this is at the corner of Freemanville and Birmingham at the green space, right?
That
The
made a
property
comment about
right next to the green space.
The big house.
The big house that's not there anymore.
Yeah, did that come through us? I didn't.
That's my question.
I saw that yesterday.
Apparently the house was sold, this is what I know. The house was sold in March, end of March. And so I look back to see, because I wasn't on at that time, so I look back to see the agendas, and I didn't see anything on the agenda for 1255 Birmingham
Well,
Road.
that house did come
That
through
went down
here, but I think it was from a previous owner that had some barn stuff going on and then.
So
it
is this a
sold.
demo?
Yeah, so I was,
Okay.
it was a big house. I mean, it is, if you're used to going down this road, a big
Yeah.
white house, and I'm driving by and it's not there. And then, you know, the little lawn, the soil stuff around it. And a lot of neighbors have said, Mary, you're on DRB. Do you know what's going on? So I just wanted to check and see.
Okay, we can look into that.
Well, you said it did come through?
I didn't see, I went back to March. I looked at April, May, June, July, August.
It could have been approved
Could have been previous
4
year.
or 5 years ago.
Would it still hold if somebody sold the property?
Yeah,
It goes with the property.
house did come through here. I just don't know what it was for.
I just wanted to double check because,
We're looking at our
Okay.
city view for
perfect.
We'll see what pops up.
Okay, thank you.
1255.
Yeah, 1255 Birmingham Road.
Because I think that was the concern about the demolition and you know, what part of the chicken houses we're keeping and stuff like that from the Arnold Mill property was just, I think there's just kind of a break in our system where it's if the code enforcement issues us, you must demolish this. I don't know if it necessarily needs to come through the design review board if it's a safety hazard for the citizens, albeit private property, but anyway, but if, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's approved 5 years ago from the design review board, it just follows the property as far as the demolition is concerned, not necessarily the owner, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I know for a fact that we granted a demolition permit or approved a demolition that has not gotten demoed. It's actually been remodeled,
Oh.
interior perspective.
Okay.
I think we just approved that it can be demoed. I don't know.
Not that it would be.
Okay.
As you wish.
Let's look it up and see.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
But is this something that we have to bring to the next design review board? Just kind of like an old business or just offline?
I mean, for me, offline is fine.
Okay.
If there's information about it, I don't think it has to come back
Okay.
up.
Unless you find that there was no permit ever.
Right,
Yes.
that's.
And we probably want to talk
Yeah.
about it.
Look back to as far as we can look back on our records,
Yes.
which isn't 5 years by any means. Like I couldn't go back any farther than like
Okay.
something, and I didn't see a permit. But again, that doesn't mean there isn't one. I just
Right.
find it. So yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay. I got that.
Okay. Any other new business? All right. Any old business? All right. Seeing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.